No, you're good.
Yeah. So for me, grief and clutter go hand in hand because when we're going through our homes, we're processing our life. And that is really what clutter is. It's unprocessed life. That is what it is. And for us to process it, we're digesting our life. We're digesting as we go. And it's easier to do it daily than it is in big punch,
Yeah.
So that's why those daily pockets of practice are so important because we're actually processing our life. And here's what's so interesting about emotions. We feel the emotions, but they're also part of our body. We will feel the emotions all in our body. And so we can have physical symptoms that go with the emotions if we're not processing. Like if we're not digesting life, sometimes we'll have digestive issues. Grief shows up in our lungs. So if we are landing in too much grief and we're not keeping our lungs healthy, we can have more respiratory problems than we need. If we're closing off our heart, we may have heart issues. You know what I mean? Our emotions land in our body. And years ago, I took a course. It was a emotional freedom technique. I learned tapping, and I learned so much in that course. And one of them is that there's no bad emotion. The most important thing about
I'm
emotion.
over here.
Hi, Nancy, I didn't see you pop in. And Heather, hello. And Marja and Eileen and Janet. Sorry, I had to pop in. So anyway, when you have emotions, the most important thing is to understand that they need to flow. It's not about not having the emotion. It's about not getting the emotion stuck in the process. And that is why clutter clearing is so huge, because it's kind of like pockets of stuck emotions in your life. And so by cleaning it out, you're helping your body to process your feelings so that they don't have this weight. Because how often do you think of clutter as this overwhelming weight on you, right? It's the emotions that are going with it. Plus, it's also stuck energy. And that's what emotions, we just want them to flow. So grief and anger and sadness and sorrow and all these emotions,
Regret.
those are all so important. But here's the thing, they just come through. And so last week I had a tremendous amount of grief. I had more grief than I normally do in any given week. But that was not the only emotion I was feeling. I think I actually had more gratitude than I did grief. And I also had relief because my dad had been in pain and sick for years. So I also had that emotion. I had the emotion of love, a lot of love. I was poor, people were pouring love, and I was feeling love. So I had love. I also had a lot of joy. So it wasn't like I was just living in the world of grief. I was living in a lot of emotions, and they were filling the world with all these emotions. And so by letting them flow and not stopping them, that's the key. Is like, you don't want to squish these emotions down and squish them down and keep them stuffed in you. It's like when you get home, you don't just stuff your stuff and pile on and dump it. You want to let these emotions flow through you, because that is healthy. That is really healthy. Because what happens, and I don't think we understand that, like if you're holding an emotion for a long period of time, like grief, grief is one that's going to pop in and out, and grief on its own is unpredictable. You cannot guess when something is going to touch your spirit and you're going to have grief spill all over things again. And so even during this class, there's a real good chance I may spill grief all over you, but then just wash it off. It's not terminal. It's just water flow. But what happens is, a lot of times grief and stress come together because there's a lot of stress. And so stress will be another strong emotion and feeling. If you stay in that field too long, it will become a habit. You think about it. So if you've been sick for a long time and you're holding your body in pain, or you're kind of just moving around, okay, so if it takes 66 days for an emotion or a habit to get developed, if you're holding your body in that space for 66 days, you're starting to develop a body habit, an emotional habit. And so this is so why in grief, it's so important to have the whole rainbow of emotions and keep them flowing, so that we don't have grief as a habit. Does that make sense? Right? And this is
Yeah.
so, I don't know why we don't all know this, but we need to know that grief is a healing emotion. When we cry, it is one of the biggest stress relievers we can have. And when we sob and wail, there's a reason for that. It comes from your soul in and out. Go ahead and give into it and then let it go. It's like joy. You think about joy, it's a fleeting emotion, and it kind of bubbles up from inside and it feels so good and warm. But it's not you don't hold joy for like 6 months at a time or even 3 hours at a time. It is a fleeting emotion. It comes through you and you just enjoy it. Grief is the same thing. We're not holding grief for a whole week. We may have more and more pockets, but then it'll start flowing through us. So it's like these are moments of emotion. They might be, it might be 10 minutes of emotion just flowing through, maybe a half an hour, but it's not it's not a steady state. Our emotions are there, our energy system talking to us. They are moving. And that is the key here in emotions, is let them move. And that is why clutter clearing is one of the most important and healing practices you can do, because you are processing your life in a joyful way. And that's why I'm always tapping into adding joy and delightful practices around it, because you're in any cleaning of clutter, you're going to have pockets of grief. You're going to have pockets of regret. You're also going to have pockets of wonder and joy and delight and love and gratitude. You're going to have lots of pockets, but a lot of times we just focus on it's going to feel bad. And there'll be moments that didn't feel good, but they need to be cleaned out of you. And then there's going to be other pockets that feel just absolutely delightful. You're going to discover and remember, and you're going to get all these warm fuzzies too. So what we want to do is cultivate and remember and enjoy the journey of it. When my dad was in the hospital and it was just he and I, okay, so here's one of my flows. So it was just he and I was just sitting there holding space for my dad. And I just was meditating on our life together. And and this is why I wanted to do it when it was raw, because I wanted you to feel that this is how it is. I remembered little moments, and they were pockets of just joy and love, and there were pockets of so much pain. And when I saw it in this, it was just moments of our life. And I realized, even though some of those pockets were so incredibly painful and they seemed horrible at the time, I realized it was just our journey together. And I wouldn't have changed one thing. I wanted the whole spectrum of life with my dad, and I got it. And he was a big man and he had a lot of emotion, and they weren't always pretty, but I wouldn't have changed anything about him. And so after he passed, and this happens to a lot of us, is the spouse or the family members that have been living with this person, there's usually a pocket that has become so heavy, that was just overwhelming by this other person's energy, and they just couldn't breathe in that space. And right after they pass, a lot of times that space, there's a space that needs to be cleared in a house, because that helps the healing process. That starts the healing process. With my mom, it was the pictures all over her house that my stepdad wanted. It was too much. My stepdad, or my father-in-law, it was the spare bedroom. There was too much dumped in there, and it just was overwhelming to him. And it's not a lack of respect. It's not a lack of love. It's an understanding that needs to go with them. That needs to be buried with them. And so I had to clean out my dad's desk. And cleaning out my dad's desk was going through his very, very personal things when I was in a very raw emotional state. So I want to share with you some of the things I did to make it so it did not weigh on me and I could move through this stage, right? So a couple of things I did. One of them is there's a prayer. It's a poem. It's a Hawaiian poem, and it's, oh, I don't know if I'm going to say this. Oh, pono, ho, it's a ho, oh, pono, pono. You don't really need to know that, but you do need to know there's 4 parts of this. And I said one or all 4 of these over and over and over. I put it in our Facebook. I put it in an announcement. write this down. This is really helpful, whether you're saying it for yourself or you're saying it from somebody else. It's thank you, I love you, please forgive me, I'm sorry, in no particular order. But I can't even tell you how many times I was saying, I'm sorry, thank you, I love you, I love you. Emotions would come up that hit me about there was something he had held, something he was feeling, and it's something he was, just his personal life. I would say those over and over. Thank you, I love you, please forgive me, I'm so sorry, and that helped. Another couple things is I would take things out of his desk and I would put them in piles. I would sort them by categories. I was not feeling the weight of each item at a time. I was sorting them by categories, and that put me more in a rhythm of execution instead of emotionally handling each one. And then I had pockets of pocket knives. I had letter openers. I had important documents. I had everything and then I could process, because there's still going to be 80% of his desk was just filler. They were not things I had to emotionally process. And then the rest were in little pockets, and I didn't necessarily have to fully process them. I could take the very emotional things and put it in a sacred space for us to just keep, so we didn't lose it. And the other things I did is he had us do an Irish wake. So we had Irish music. I played Irish music, and that is a very uplifting music. It is rhythm, and it kept me moving and flowing. I had the windows open. I had really good ventilation in there, which kept fresh energy coming in. I had essential oils with me, and I was taking multiple breaks to go for walks, to go be with family, to cry, to process. I did it in segments because that was too much. The essential oils I was using Raven-Sarah, because that is for lung health, and I know grief tends to go for lungs. So I was very much caring for that, and I was using sweet orange because that brings joy back into my life. So I just wanted to share all that. I know I probably took more time today, but this is really important to understand, that when I'm talking about adding practices of joy and little pockets, I am really telling you how to process your life and cultivate more joy into the practice. It's not done, I do it lightly, but it is not a lightly, the intention is very important that you start cultivating joy into it and understanding it is a rainbow of emotions. And you don't have to just live with some of the heavier ones. There are other ones. And so by adding joy and light and essential oils and music, it lightens up some of the others and helps the flow so that you can keep going. And I think that was pretty much, there's a lot of other things. I do have some energy exercises I specifically do for lungs and hearts and radiant energy. That's a practice I am very seriously cultivating right now, is keeping my joy flowing through heavy grief.
What was the first essential oil you said that was for?
Raven-Sarah. It's Ravintsara. Raven-Sarah. This one is a really good, strong one for respiratory health. And what I'm doing is I'm just breathing it in when I need it. I just keep it close to me. And the same thing with sweet orange. It's very good for creativity, for confidence, for courage, and for joy.
I put that in my daughter's in her little schoolroom playroom in the mornings.
Yeah,
sweet orange. It's nice.
Yeah. So there's all these different practices, but music helped me tremendously of having that. It wasn't a lot of words. When you're having a lot of heavy grief, don't go into love songs that are going to rip your heart out, So this was light fiddle music. I listened to a lot of light fiddle music. That was very much keeping me going from right side to left side, crossing over my energy system so I wasn't getting stuck. And it was keeping me buoyant. So thank you guys all for letting me share that. I so thank you for letting me do this in a raw state, because it's important that I still had those emotions, because they're here for a reason. And my dad would have loved that I am experimenting with, every time I feel grief, I play Irish music and I have it in my head. And it's not because I don't love him and value him. He did not want me to sob. He did the Irish wake for a specific reason. And so there's no rule that says you have to be completely miserable for 6 weeks. You can also cultivate, whenever I think of him, I think of Irish music, and it brings me back into what I loved about my dad and the joy. So give yourself a trigger of joy to nourish the pain, so that when you feel the pain, you can nourish it and bring your body back into a place of gratitude and love and joy, as well as grief.
And I think that this is pretty relevant too, because in COVID times, some of us haven't been able to have those experiences.
I couldn't see my dad for the last 4 months. He was in so much pain and he was dying, and I could not see him. So I'd been grieving for quite a while without even knowing it. And I think with COVID, we've all been grieving because we had to let go of our families, and we couldn't go out and see other people, and we couldn't love people the way we wanted to. There's no way we're not grieving. We're all grieving. And so it's like, but we're all also finding joy, pockets of joy in the middle of all of this. Yeah. When the saints go marching in. Yeah, I love that. So, and that's what clutter is, and that's what the emotions, but emotions are meant to heal. They're meant to flow through us. Just don't let them get stuck. That's the most important. And on my way to say goodbye to my dad, on the way to hospice, I remember driving out saying, I'm going to go say goodbye to my dad for the last time. And all the way there, I wailed and cried from my gut out. And I tried to call my husband, and he wasn't available. And then I had a remembrance. Emotions need to flow. And instead of stifling that down, I said, Denise, you need to feel this completely. And thank heavens I had a pack of angels driving me to hospice, because I couldn't see a thing. But I let those emotions, and through the week, as they hit me, I let them come through. I did not try to stop them. I let the emotion, and what it is, it's like cleansing. Grief is not bad. It is this beautiful, it's like water cleansing your whole energy system, your emotions. It's healing. So when you feel pain or anger, sometimes anger is a catalyst for change. These are not bad emotions. It's when they're stuck. Stuck emotions will cause pain and and grief in your life. Okay, now, I think I'm done now. Thank you. Thank you. This is important for us to get this. And your appreciation of holding on space for me was so grateful this last week. I can't even tell you how much I appreciated the thoughts and the kind. I just felt it. So thank you. Okay, so now we're going to shift things up. Okay, so everybody do this with me. Brush off. Give yourself a good brush off. Lift your hands up in the air. Hands up, and I'm going to be hands open, hands closed, hands open, hands closed. Oh, stretch, stretch. Oh, stretch. Make noise. Oh. This is one way to activate your radiant energy system is stretching and yawning, and that helps release that. And then brushing off. Crossing over your hands. Give it a good shake off your body.
I think we could probably play some of that music we had shared. Like, I shared that Groove is in the Heart. We should just like bring that song into your head.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So hold on just one quick second. We'll see if we can get some Irish music going.
Battery 80%.
Let's see. See if we're lucky here.
And none of the cars.
Oh, no. Sorry, I'm on advertisement. Okay. That's what's in my head. anything you want to share and talk about? Well, we'll do like another 5 minutes of discussion if anybody wants to bring this up, because I don't want to not give this space.
What I was trying to say before I started crying like a baby was that since we haven't been able to grieve in a normal capacity, having something like the clutter clearing idea of moving things through just, I think, is an assistive way to do that on whatever time you have. So that's I've found that can be cathartic, right, to the process.
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
I've been doing I'm downsizing, and so I've been going through a lot. And yesterday I finally went out to my my chicken coop where I no longer have chickens, and I actually started getting my hands in it, and the grief started coming, and I realized I hadn't fully processed the changes of my life.
Yeah.
Because whenever I'm getting my hands on things, I feel like that's inviting the grief to come in.
Yes.
And I've been it's kind of been overwhelming how much grief has come.
Yeah.
It's a little hard, but you're right. It is what you had said is so perfect, that clutter is unprocessed life. Because I feel like as I'm going through my house, like I'm processing those parts of my life that I kind of stopped processing.
Yeah. And I love that you're clearing your grief through chicken poop. That just makes me so happy. I love that. Thank you. And it won't, just let it go. But then bring in other things that bring in other emotions to go with it. Any other thoughts that came up? Anybody want to share anything? Okay. All right. So we're going to pop into a breakout room.
Sorry, I was going to maybe tie into that, the breakout room, because I was going to point out, like, I shared with everyone on the Facebook group a picture of a closet that I cleared. It's the one behind me, actually. But how much, like, satisfaction I get every morning waking up and, like, not having to figure out what pants fit and what, shirt I should wear. I have everything organized, and I can see all of my shirts, and I can know all of these pants in the drawer fit me, and I know where my sweatshirts are, which one, the dirty ones, are actually in the laundry. Like there's a finding that joy, and that it doesn't always come naturally to me, because it just seems overwhelming and arduous, and like, okay, I did this and now it's going to be undone in 5 minutes because I have kids, and that's what happens. But those there are ways to fully make that transition, to find that joyful piece. So if we want to, we can go to breakout rooms. I have everything set up here. And
just to carry on with what you just said, a couple of things that we really practiced on that is our daily practice of like thoughtfully placing, which was processing our life daily, which is a huge practice to continue to cultivate. But also, we all are going to need more of our creative juices. Moving forward, we're starting to come out of COVID. We need us to come together. I know all of us we're all important for different reasons, and we're essential. So by minimizing some of those daily decision making, so we don't exhaust ourselves in daily decision making, that will open us all up to have more creativity to move out of this COVID time and flourish our lives forward. So all of us are extremely important moving forward. And then to minimize some of that daily decision making fatigue helps us get enough energy to live in a more the way we're supposed to forward.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to go into a breakout, our first one. And so a couple questions I wanted to visit with on there is, first, I want you to think of what you're most proud of or you appreciate about yourself from this journey, this book club we've done. And I don't care if it's just that you showed up to class, that you read most of the book. It doesn't matter how small or how large it is. It's that you acknowledge what you did and what you appreciate about it, what you're proud of. The second one is, what daily practice do you want to continue or can turn into a habit that you have started or you want to, that you learned from the book or this class? So the one is, what are you most proud of? What do you appreciate? And then what daily practice do you want to continue and turn into a habit? Because like I said, a habit takes about 66 days of continually done before it kind of gets stuck in there. So what do you want to continue on to really get that ingrained in your life to help your whole life be easier?
Denise, you want 10 minutes on this or 6? Or
Let's go 8.
8, okay.
Or 7. Let's go 7. Don't you think? I think 7, don't you think?
Sure.
Yeah. 7. As well. And then I also wanted to share before I get going, you know how I can go on the soapbox here, that I am going to start another clutter clearing event, and I'll be doing it through spring. If I have other funding, I will absolutely incorporate that in. This next one will be more of a private one because I don't have funding, so it will be a fee based. But I'm going to do one in April for the 4 weeks in April. And so we're going to keep going. It won't have a book, but it's very much consisting on what we've already been working on, and just keep these practices going. Because I know we're all at different levels of clutter, and clutter shows up in different ways. Sometimes it is like busyness of trying to fill it through your time by joining a book club, Amazon, and then sometimes it's the physical weight of clutter. Honestly, we all have different levels. And so, you know, if you find yourself, you know, with your clutter up to here, or it's just a couple pockets, it is no reflection of who you are as a body, mind, and soul. You are absolutely perfect. This sometimes life just happens. And it's like, you know how like sometimes you have a stiff sore and you get like a knot in your shoulder and stuff, and you go to the massage place and they're like, oh man, do you have a knot in your shoulder? Think of your clutter as like a knot in your shoulder. You're not going to be like, oh, you're a bad person, you have a knot in your shoulder. You just have a knot in your shoulder. So whether your house is full or empty or your schedule's full, it is not who you are. And this is really important for you to grasp, that you are perfect. And I have worked with families that they're honestly, their houses were really, really full. And I don't know that I have ever met more spectacular people in my life. I love everybody. And so this is what I know. Sometimes our gifts are also our Achilles heels. So sometimes if you have this creative spirit of joyful, you know, exploration, sometimes it turns into a pile of clutter. But it's because of that joyful creative spirit. And also sometimes you are sensitive to energy. It might be easy to pop into anxiety and depression because you have this full spectrum of emotions. That does not mean it's a bad thing. It just means that your gifts and your Achilles heel sometimes are on 2 different spectrums. And so honor who you are. And, you know, sometimes the society doesn't understand it. That's their thing. You are beautiful. And just to keep moving forward, and you know, one of my favorite ways of doing it is you're just creating pockets of sacredness in your house, little pockets of delight. And sometimes, and these, as the goal is to start with little pockets, a little place to handle your mail so it doesn't explode all over, a little place to sleep at night, a kitchen that has a little space and a counter. And maybe they are 1 foot by 1 foot. Maybe then they get to 2 feet. And then before you know it, your whole kitchen becomes a sacred space. It is about growing in small little increments and just creating a space that you feel nourished in and you thrive in. It's not about judgment. And that's why we keep playing with emotions of how to do this joyfully and delightfully and kindly to ourselves, because it's so easy to be beating ourselves up. But honestly, that's not as effective as finding ways to make our practice joyful, or, you know, and uplifting and grateful and delightful, and to keep it going. Those are solid habits. Those are habits that will work in your whole life. And there's a poem that says something about, and I wish I had it in my head, but it's something about when you get something easily, it is not as appreciated as if you go through it hard. And so going through a journey that has been a struggle, and you go deeper and you are richer by a deeper struggle. And I think that's kind of, when I think about my dad, it was a deep relationship because it had a lot of emotion. But there was a lot of emotion. And so it wasn't lukewarm water, and by going through this house and you have the realm of the rainbow of emotions, and you keep going through it, and you create, and you have this nourishing space. So, just discovering what you love in the process and understanding the value of it and figuring out who you are now, and letting go of who you thought you were going to be 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or where you thought your life would be. That there's so much value in going through this process of discovering. And that's what I always think of it. I always think of every time you pock into any journey, you're going to have pockets of wisdom and delight and confirmation of who you are, it's going to teach you your home, and the process will teach you who you are and where you need to go. So anyway, I just think it's the best. But be kind to yourself in the process. Be so kind to yourself in the process, because it's not easy.
Denise, the poem I always think of, the poem I always think of is If by Rudyard Kipling. And I don't have it memorized anymore, but it was if you can keep your head about you when everyone else is losing theirs and blaming it on you. I mean, that has been the mantra of my personal experience, and I would say the Tool Library too.
Right. Oh my gosh. No, I mean, you guys made it through the Tool Library. Holy cow. That was huge. Their journey on the Tool Library. Talk about keep going. Yes, Nancy. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah. I need a phone number to the Tool Library.
Amanda, can you share?
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
I can't find the chat. Can you just give it to me right now?
253
237
237
2290.
2290.
2290. Thank you so much.
And
Are there hours that people answer the phone, or is that a hit and miss thing? I can leave a message to be called.
I will let Amanda answer that.
Amanda?
Sorry, my computer was glitching. I'm constantly at your disposal, but please leave a message in case there's someone screaming and needs my attention at that time.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah.
So just a recap on the Tool Library. So they and the City of Federal Way has graciously given us space to do this book club and provided the books, which I am so grateful for this space. And so the ways you can support the Tool Library, optimally, of course, it's nice to have tools coming to them, but they have kind of a backlog on that. So volunteering and cash donations are the strongest way you can support their progress and help people, not have to buy chainsaws and sewing machines and dehydrators, that we can work together as a community. And so we don't all have to have individual of all this stuff. We can have more of a community working together. So keep in mind how we can support and continue to support the Tool Library, because that has been a creation of deep love.
I want to know if anyone tried any of the recipes in the back of the book.
Oh yeah, did anybody?
Not tempted.
There was a rather involved one for the sherry, which I've never made anything like that, so it'd be interesting.
I'd love to try the cheesecake, but there's nothing on that ingredients that's in my diet.
What were some of your favorite things about this book? What were some of your favorite tips that she had?
I really liked it. Sorry, I know you're not just asking me, but I can always give perspective.
Yeah,
I really liked that visual of imagining if the things that we possessed, if we chopped them up and put them into the garden, if they grew and plentified, because that, I think, embodies one of my goals about conscious consumerism, about how we consume things, and how, imagine if you put everything in your wastebasket into your garden and it grew more of the same thing.
Yeah.
You certainly wouldn't plant a plastic tree. You wouldn't plant a styrofoam or batteries. Why would you need, if it was going to maybe be productive, but you're not going to be packaging your own things. So how can we change our habits, change the way that we make these choices about bringing things into our lives, and not just feel like once we put them in the bin, they're gone forever and they're not our problem, because eventually, yes, they'll be our problem or generations after. So
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And I loved you kept bringing the consciousness in there, because for me, it's all about being present, which is very much conscious of what we're consuming, how we're living, how we're even placing things when we come in the front door. Are we squishing, stuffing, piling, throwing, tossing? Who else had some things that they loved about this book, and Margareta? Susan.
Oh, the whole concept of death cleaning and starting. It's never too early to start, and I don't like thinking about it, but it's nice. Good to have in the back of my mind. And one of my new mantras is, when I pick something up, will my daughters or husband or whoever be happy to find this?
Yeah.
If I'm gone. And I've been narrowing down a lot, working on it.
I love that mantra. That's a good one. And having a why besides ourselves, and sometimes because of ourselves, but I love that she's looking at it from a different perspective of us being thoughtful forward. I loved it. Anybody else have any things that they loved about this book?
Well, like Susan was saying, I thought it kind of took a little bit of the stigma of death away. We talked about it, and I think I used to think about it and worry about my stuff. And when I died, and now I'm like, well, here's a practical approach and realistic and grounded. And I just really appreciated that. And thanks for bringing it to our attention. I really appreciate knowing this book and your tips as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I liked her. She was just a common sense lady. Like, I'm not a guru. This is just common sense of how we do it. I liked it. I very much like that too. Anybody else? Kathleen, I think you were going to say something.
Well, I found myself sharing with my children and family why certain things are so special to me. And, and the other things aren't that important, but there are some things, and I never did that before. So
yeah, she kind of gave us the thing of like starting these conversations, like
yes.
an opening of starting, and how valuable that is. Yeah.
Yes.
Anybody else have any? Yeah, Kyra.
Like you were saying earlier, how we've got, not just one emotion at a time. I felt like the book, was fairly lighthearted, even though, it had its serious moments. So trying to remember and bring that into our cleaning was something that stuck out to me, and being able to not always take things so seriously and enjoy the silly things as well.
Yeah, I like that.
Kyra, I have to say, I just love the office that you're in, that it's actually your schoolroom, and what you've done to make it so beautiful. I've really enjoyed seeing it. So thank you.
My students enjoy it too. I've got a couple ukuleles on my wall. I've got a guitar in the corner. I've got all sorts of fun stuff.
Any other thoughts on the book? Margareta's wisdom. Theodora, are you raising your hand?
Susan is.
Yes.
Oh.
I would just say I just like the way she wrote it, that it's an easy read. So like you say, even though it's serious, there's lighthearted, real, like you're saying, raw. One day it's about, one page it's about her dad dying, but the next page could be a recipe. And that it's so it's not overwhelming and feeling like, do this, start a list, next chapter's that. And it's something that you'd want to read again, or just flip open randomly and you could get something out of it. So it just seemed like you could always keep chewing it on it and enjoying it. So it just seemed less intimidating, and made the whole process just less intimidating. And therefore, even though it's serious, it's like, okay, it's validating, and then you can do it and revisit it often. So I thought I just really liked the tone of her her wisdom.
Me too. Me too. Yeah. Theodora?
Yeah. So what I really liked is that she mentions keeping a balance of, yes, you're clutter clearing and you're also making doctor's appointments and this and that. So it really helped me to view this as a project that's going to last. And also because I have a tendency sometimes to just kind of obsess and it's my life. And then of course you become exhausted and depleted because you haven't done anything else. So it's really helped me to kind of keep a balance of things and clutter clear. And just this whole process of being tuned into the organic nature of it, the ebb and flow, and working with my emotions and giving space and time for the emotions and not allowing it to stop my process, but that it may slow it down at points, or I may need to pause and really process, but that it's part of the process. It's been amazing. And to have this group, this has felt like my support group. That's what I tell people. I'm downsizing and I have this lovely weekly support group that's helping me through it.
Yeah, that was beautifully said. When she said that she was cleaning out her house and she was giving it a year, and that just felt so like, I don't have to do this in 3 weeks. I could. And then how she said, I did a room and then I paused and I gave myself a break. I mean, doesn't it feel like we always have to just be at the ground? I love that. Thank you, Theodora. I agree 100%. I love it. Anybody else? Susan.
Oh, two things. I loved how she calls it the gentle art. And my favorite quote is, I have death cleaned so many times for others. I'll be damned if someone else has to death clean after me.
Yeah. I love that we took this book slowly instead of rushing through, because doesn't it feel like we're always rushing through life? I like that we meandered through this book, and I totally recommend kind of going back and reflecting on the book and seeing what kind of spoke to you. What messages kept kind of coming up, and go deeper. Well, just enjoy, because sometimes I think when you read a book, you don't really grasp how valuable it is until you kind of go back and catch it again, and you're like, oh, I get it. Anybody else?
I just want to put a plug in to the Facebook page. How much I've enjoyed that it's given me an opportunity to go back and reflect on music and some poetry and others' thoughts. It's just been a great tool. I know it's not part of the survey, but I just think it's been really important part of us being able to speak to each other during the process.
Thank you. And I believe we're going to be able to keep that going, aren't we?
I was just going to say, I can't remember who I need to give credit for, but someone mentioned, I'm going to change the name of it because it's not distinguishing to this class anymore, but I thought Clutter Buddies was pretty good.
I like Clutter Buddies. Let's go Clutter Buddies.
I can't remember who, someone in the class mentioned that or said that.
Anybody remember mentioning that? Kara, yay, Clutter Buddies. You did it.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, okay. And I did notice that Jean was unmuted for a minute if she wanted to speak. I know sometimes there's a delay.
No, I just spaced out.
I was going to go ahead. You speak your mind, girl.
Yeah, please.
No,
I'm good.
You're fine. No pressure.
Yeah. Even though the support group is going to be more individual, I don't know if I'm going to be doing recordings into the Facebook, just because it's a little bit different. But I will do highlights into the Facebook. So if you're not part of the group, I still want you to be connected so you feel supportive. And I so appreciate Amanda and Jeanette keeping that space open for us to keep sharing little things. And honestly, with Facebook, if it serves you,
and if you guys,
if it doesn't, it's okay.
Share pictures or thoughts or
and I
ideas
love the music.
Or questions.
I shared a spoonful of sugar with I'm going.
Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins, sorry. That's one thing about grief. So one thing about grief happens in high stress is sometimes your brain doesn't quite process as well, and you get a little bit more clumsy. So I've been dropping things all over the place. Just a note. I have my favorite quote was actually from the foreword. The only thing we know for sure is that we will die one day, but before we can try to do almost anything. And that was in the foreword. I love that. I'm like, we're not dead yet. At some point, we're all going to die. But until then, we can keep trying to do whatever we want. Okay, so I think we're a little, anybody else have any finishing thoughts you want to add before we close out our first official book club?
I was just going to say, if you love your books, keep them. If you have somebody else that you think would like it, please pass it on. If you don't want it, feel free to give it away. You can bring it back to the tool library and we will save them. Probably give them to Denise for the next time she does a class. But please do whatever brings you joy with your book.
Yeah. Because we can, if we can pass them over, and I don't know that we might still be referring to this book club a little bit in the future, because I just think her wisdom about the pacing and stuff, I think we will kind of tap into it a little bit. So if there's anybody you know that would also be interested in joining our group, please, reach out to me so I can include them.
There was a couple questions about the Facebook group name. So we'll send that in an email. As long if anyone hasn't been getting the emails from Denise, then please send us a message with your email address. But I think the easiest thing would be to just give you guys the link to that, because if I try to do something else right now, it's just going to slow video down.
and I've been sending out the emails on Sunday night and then Wednesday evening. I'll probably continue to do that through this next series. So just so you have that rhythm of when to expect me to pop in, unless of course something happens, in which case, everything is adjustable. All right. Thank you guys. My gratitude is deep for you. And I have complete faith that little pockets of joy and sacred spaces can become a whole household. And in a community also has little pockets of clutter. And sometimes those pockets in a community don't feel good. But as we expand life in our own homes, it expands into our communities. And this is honestly meant to just continue to grow well beyond us. So,
awesome. Yes. I have to bring the clutter clearing idea to the tool library. It's just harder than. But I appreciate you guys. Thank you, Denise, so much. Your inspiration. You're just such a joy to be with. I'm so glad we got to do this on a regular basis. So
me too. And if you get heavy, stretch.
Definitely.
Keep opening your heart. Keep your heart open. Just keep keeping your heart open. That's the only thing you have to do in clutter clearing is keep your heart open.
There you go.
All right. Thank you guys. Hopefully I'll see you next week.